there.
Again, thank you, Meredith, for having us here today. So greatly appreciate this opportunity. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will start our presentation and get into presentation mode here. And the strange thing is by having it in presentation mode, I no longer see you guys. So if there's if anyone needs to kind of stop me for anything, so definitely you can do so. And our presentation today is called Somos Tango, Social Political Activism in Contemporary Tango Lyrics. And I do want to mention that in this class, we will be talking about political unrest in Argentina, as well as the women's movement. So you will hear themes of gender violence, also discussion about the desaparecidos, for instance, in Argentina, those who were murdered during the 70s. And so we will provide a trigger warning now, given the content of this class, but also before Juanjo plays a video clip, he will let you know in case you'd like to turn away from the screen for like the 30 seconds that he'll play that clip. So, so I will go first for the first 30 minutes, and then, excuse me, Juanjo will talk about the political economy and the political unrest, and then I will go. But I heard something. Okay, again, it's very strange not to actually see. Normally when I teach, I actually see my students. And so thank you again, Meredith, for the introduction. I did want to say a little bit in terms of my time in Buenos Aires in 2019. I did take that time to learn the Spanish, as well as the time to learn about the culture and the history. And Juanjo and I met in a tango class in Buenos Aires, and where we developed a close friendship. And I was technically his very first student. He needed someone to practice with. And so he was a fantastic teacher. And so I continued studying and working with him. So in the last year specifically, we've been dedicating our lessons to learning, for me, like learning more about Spanish, but also learning tango lyrics, both traditional and contemporary. And okay, so hold on. I have to also mute the text messages that will appear. And again, if I need to pause or if there's anything, just feel free to speak up because I can't see the chat at all at this point. So first, before we start, I want to just give you a general outline of what we're going to be talking about. So first, it's important that we define what exactly do we mean by contemporary tango. Okay, so many of you have heard of tango nuevo. So we'll talk about specifically this term contemporary tango, which is tango actual. And so there's a distinction that is made in the literature. Then Juanjo will then talk about the history of political unrest and the collapse of the economy, leading up to the tragedy of Cro-Magnon. And then I will speak for the last half-hour class about Ni Una Menos. It's a women's movement in Latin America, an opportunity for women to take the lead in tango. And so first, we need to define exactly what it is. And so contemporary tango, it's both talking about the music, right? So multi-genre. So you see this already in Tango Nuevo. So you see it's combination of electronic rock, tango, rap, punk, jazz, just to name a few of the type of genres that you hear in the Tango Nuevo music and what is often was played in the early 2000s. And some of you are familiar with this type of music. And then you also see in this category defining contemporary tango hybrid of different technologies. So you see this fusion of like electronic and traditional, seeing things digitized, accessing this music on Spotify, for instance, or on Apple Music. And it's not uncommon to see electric guitars or even electric pianos. In the lyrics, which we'll be focusing more on today, we are seeing a construction of the somos and nosotros identity in the words and in the poetry. So we have concrete references to protests, corruption, and social movements. And whereas in the past, we have learned about more generally about the political and economic unrest during the Great Depression, for instance, or with the significance or role of immigration. Here in contemporary tango, we get more specific references. So it's a slight distinction. And then also we have, okay, I don't know how to turn off my messages, so you'll just keep saying, I should just let my friend know I'm teaching right now. We also see a difference in the musical aesthetics. And so the sound can be, not all contemporary tango sounds like this, but it can have a more angry, fiery tone. And then you also see in the dancers as well, you see dancers questioning the kodogos. So, and then also the dance form being more fluid in a sense that they invite other dance styles and forms as well. So all of these sort of elements make up contemporary tango, but when they talk about tango actual, they often are referring to the lyrics as well as the actual music being produced. And when we talk about tango nuevo is dancers, we are often talking about the dance style. So there's a slight distinction, difference in terms there. And so Oscar del Priore is quoted saying, "El tango se ha muerto, no hay tango actual." So in Buenos Aires from the 1970s to 2000s, one would often hear that tango was dead, that there had been no contemporary tango since Piazzolla. In fact, radio host and tango expert Oscar de Priore commented in an interview that tango was dead. And so, however, that couldn't be furthest from the truth. Tango wasn't dead. Critics argue that it's just been dormant, waiting for a rebirth. And so here we're going to have an example of this kind of fury sound, this type of like angry sound. So I'm just going to play for you a quick clip of Orquesta Típica Fernández Fierro.
Dijiste la verdad, sonriendo y al callar, se oyó desde el silencio de cristal la soledad. Hablábamos del mar, de un puerto que se va, la noche sin descanso, el día gris en la ciudad.
Here represented people wearing not typical tango clothes, and they are wearing street clothes, and also the movements just look slightly more, what some people call like more violent, and so kind of more expressive, slightly different than we might see even with like D'Arienzo's orchestra, for example. So this is kind of like one example, one model for contemporary tango. All right, so let me get back to the presentation. And so I'm going to hand it off now to Juan, who will now take up this particular section. So I need to exit my screen here and hand it over to Juan.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for having us here. Thank you, Meredith, and thank you for this opportunity. So I will continue with the next sections. And let me share the screen. Okay. 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 There's a translation of a phrase that represents this connection between tango and all the political unrest by an author and researcher of social and political contents within tango lyrics, that it says, tango is a complaint, a demand, and many times a scream of pain and rebellion. It is this way because tango has emerged from the guts and womb of the people who suffer the injustice of the system. With this, we see that there's always been a strong connection with all these, and in this period on contemporary tango more than ever, this is true for all this. So the aim of contemporary tango is to portray a real urban landscape describing the social injustice and economic and existential problems, presenting the protagonist in an identity fight and search. We can see that tango is reborn here in this context as a creative way of resistance. In this section, for the next 30 minutes, we'll learn about all these points that we see on the right, like the last dictatorship, los desaparecidos, madres y abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, el Corralito, all different events that had influence on lives of the lyricist, and of course it influenced on their compositions and their creations. If there's any questions, please write them on the chat, and then Mari, Lourdes, and I will answer them later. We will have also some minutes for questions. So on this timeline, we can see on top some of the important events on contemporary Argentinian history that has influenced tango lyricists, their lives, and their works and compositions. After the golden age of tango, there was a period of decay due to many factors. For example, the popularity of other types of music, that tango was considered music for old people, the number of orchestras, recordings, and tango venues decline, and also the period of there's a connection between the dictatorship and tango, that we will speak about that. Some people even claim that tango was dead, as Mari Lourdes mentioned, but in fact, we say this, that it was taking a nap, and then there will be a waking up and rebirth in the 80s and 90s that will lead us to contemporary tango. And we see that from the year 2000 onwards, there has been a new boom of tango lyricists and orchestras from the year, and orchestras. All these topics, like the crisis, the dictatorship and all the crimes, the unemployment, the poverty, hunger, the tragedy, they all are represented on contemporary tango lyrics, and that's why it's important to it's extra content that tango show us. It's a testimony of all the what's going on in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. So it's very interesting to get into the lyrics besides the music and the dance. So the first example that we'll see is a tango called Ni Olvido Ni Perdón by Juan Batuone. And here, on this part, it's speaking during the years of the dictatorships in Argentina, there was a strong censorship towards tango. The topics and the use of lunfardo was seen as a threat to morality and the correct use of the Spanish language. Many scientists and activists and artists were prosecuted during this period, and many of them disappeared during this period. This is kidnapped, tortured, and killed by the army and the police. And the families never find the bodies. So why then we see this about the desaparecidos. And nowadays, the lyricists and composers feel that speaking about this dark period of history is a must. It's a social duty to remember these genocide acts in order to prevent this type of regimes to appear again. In this lyric, we see that the narrator starts saying, no me resigno a tanto espanto, hambre, llanto, hay tanta gente sin laburo, tristes, duros. He's speaking, the mood of this tango is of a strong critic and complaint. On this first line, he's shouting a strong basta, enough, stop fooling us and cheating on us, and listing all the different difficult issues in society. After pointing this, the tango invites us to take action, because it says, si no pensamos para el año nuevo, vamos a estar en un cajón, saying that if we don't reflect about this and act quickly, by New Year's Eve, we'll be inside a coffin. And finally, the last line, hagámonos responsables, y a los que fueron culpables, ni el olvido ni el perdón. There, what we see is that it's an invitation to be accountable as a society, and to those guilty people, we won't forget them. We won't forget what they've done, and we won't forgive them. Here it's interesting also to point out the word corralito on the third line. On the third line, that it's a word that it's been created in Argentinian Spanish during the crisis of 2001, and we won't find them in traditional tango lyrics. That's why there are words that immediately take us to a specific period on history, on tango. And corralito was the informal name for the economic measures taken at the end of the year 2001 in order to stop bank runs, and this measurement was fully enforced for 1 year, and it consisted on almost a completely froze bank accounts and forbade withdrawals from US dollar denominated accounts. So we see this is an example of how it reflects the periods and all the spirits. Now we'll listen to a little bit to
No me resigno
Tango.
a tanto espanto, hambre, llanto. Hay tanta gente sin laburo, tristes, duros. La dignidad se la vendieron a un final, el corralito en el banco del mamau, y a la justicia.
Okay, here something that it's interesting to note is that on the cover of this album, there is a man with smoking a cigarette, and this is a sign that is the former minister for the economy in Argentina, that was responsible for all this situation of hunger and poverty. And this is a difference with contemporary tango and traditional tango. Like in the critics were more general, and traditional tango lyrics, the critics were more about the system as a whole. And in contemporary tango lyrics, we address a person or a specific group. So this is also like a difference of contemporary tango lyrics.
No me resigno a tanto espanto.
Now we'll see another example. This is Buenos Días, Buenos Aires, and the fragment of this tango, it says, Buenos días a los que ya no están, muertos, vivos, desaparecidos, sobre las calles grises de esta ciudad. Los desaparecidos, this is the disappear one, is a group of anonymous people that ordinary people refer to As society, we know a lot of names of disappeared people, but the cause and place of death of many, many of them is still uncertain. And this contemporary tango, it's saying good morning to all of them. So it's making them present and bringing them to be with us. Then this tango is called Pompeya no olvida. The fragment, it says, Pompeya no olvida que allá en Famatima vivía una piba carita de anís, amor de rayuela, perfume de esquina, hoy la andan buscando, también era abril. Quién sabe, tal vez ella siga soñando y ya no recuerde la calle Cachi. Al menos que sepa que la andan buscando desde hace ya tanto su abuela Beatriz. The mothers, this refers to this tango speaks in third person about a granddaughter and her grandmother that is looking for her. The Mothers of Plaza de Mayo is an Argentinian human rights association formed in response to the national reorganization process, this military dictatorship, with the goal of finding the desaparecidos initially, and then determine the culprits of crimes against humanity to promote the trial and sentencing. There's a ceremony that they started during the last dictatorship, and they still do it every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. They march around the May pyramid at the central hub of Plaza de Mayo, and they give speeches from the where they give their opinion about current national and global situations. So Las Madres y Abuelas clearly represent the resistance against the dictatorship, the chronicles of the crimes and the fight with the purpose of finding the desaparecidos, the disappeared children, and their grandchildren. So this is a clear example of this feeling of the lyricists that they have to give voice to all these situations. Here we'll see a short part of the...
La consigna de abuelas es que todos nos demos las manos para acompañar este proceso para que sea eterno, para que nunca más vuelvan sistemas dictatoriales.
Abril se quedó suspendido en la siesta, las horas no fluyen ni quieren morir. Un sol de aluminio remeda la cresta del gris caserón de la calle Cachí. Las mismas veredas de tarde me cuentan historias perdidas flotando en abril. Y vuelvo al portón de los años 70 vestido de asombro, un sueño de jean. Pompeya no olvida que allá en Famatina vivía una piba carita de anís.
Okay, we've seen many of them are part of the abuelas and madres, like really like human rights activists, that they are doing a great work about all this in not only in Argentina but also in Latin America. It's something that it's very interesting to see and to...
La consigna de abuelas es que todos nos demos las manos.
On this slide, we see that the social and economic critical tangos are not something new. In fact, this type of tangos started long before, during the period of the Guardia Nueva, with the great lyricist Enrique Santos Discépolo, as you know, considered the philosopher of tango. We can see here that for example, in the famous tango Cambalache, when it starts saying on the first line que el mundo fue y será una porquería, ya lo sé, en el 506 y en el 2000 también, is saying that the world always was and will be a rubbish, we already know, in the year 506 and in 2000, and then on the 70 years later, a contemporary lyricist, it's saying, mi ciudad está en la pesadilla. This is the third column. My city's in the nightmare. Then it continues describing all the depressing situation, the problems, and it says, the last part, it says, ahí en la calle que siempre duerme, there's, los tigres amarillos de la hambruna están llevándose el cadáver, and the other part, en la masacre de las bolsas nuevas, en la masacre de las bolsas nuevas de basura. So it makes it's a reference of, instead of saying this, like the city that never sleeps, referring to Avenida Corrientes, it's saying the city that always sleep with hunger and with bags of rubbish, saying that on one hand, there is a street full of life and shows and everything, but on the other hand, there are a lot of homeless children sleeping and living on the streets, and it's full of rubbish. So it's we see that this is a constant in Tango. Okay, in the following section, we're going to speak about el colapso económico, that are all the events that led to the crisis, and we'll see some examples of how all these events are represented in tango. For example, this Buenos Aires y yo, it's a tango by Marta Pizzo, and it says, y entre tus calles me encontré caceroleando mi dolor, marchando al centro de tu entraña revelada. En mi pancarta de cartón te convocaba en ilusión con la impotencia y la utopía en el sudor. Mi voz resiste la impiedad de los que exhiben la global costumbre obscena de ignorar lo que escasea en los demás. Hoy mi semilla floreció. Con su presente de cristal me quedo acá para luchar en mi ciudad. The author of this tango declares her relationship with the city, from her childhood to the period of fights and protests in Buenos Aires. It starts saying, and amongst your streets, I found myself caceroleando my pain, marching towards the center of your revealed guts. On my cardboard banner, you were called by an illusion. Here, it's interesting to note the verb caceroleando. Cacerolear is a contemporary word that doesn't appear in traditional tango lyrics, so it's an immediate reference to something specific. A cacerolazo is a form of popular protest which consists of a group of people making noise by banging pots, pans, and other things from the kitchen. And this we can see there on the picture, that is a cacerolazo. And on the end, the biggest cacerolazo in recent history, it was after by the end of the year 2001, when the Argentinian economy collapsed and there was this Great Depression. A lot of working class people and middle class took the street and went there to Plaza de Mayo and everywhere to protest. So we continue with this tango. Is called Dársena Sur, and it's another example of the criticism towards the social situation of the country. There's a strike and a fight on every corner. That's what the lyric says. It says, esta mañana en Buenos Aires hay huelga de correos y una pelea en cada ojal. Por la ventana veo pasar a tanta gente. ¿A dónde van? No tengo rumbo, vivo nomás. Late mi vida con el compás. Otra mañana en Buenos Aires me tomo un cafecito y vamos a laburar. Tal vez mañana en Buenos Aires yo cierro la valija, me subo a un barco y nunca más. There's in the beginning, huelga is the Spanish word for strike. So the first line is saying, there's a strike and a fight on every corner this morning in Buenos Aires. All of us that have lived in Buenos Aires or that have spent some weeks or months in Buenos Aires, part of leaving the city is getting stuck in traffic due to cacerolazos and strikes. It's something that it's very common on nowadays. And it's interesting that this tango is speaking about that. So when we listen to contemporary tango, it thinks that we all have lived in first person, and this is important about tango. It's this power of being a testimony of each period. So when we listen and analyze the lyrics of the Guardia Nueva, the Época Dorada, and all the periods, we see the testimony. So this is an example that it's as we will see in this presentation, it gives a lot of information and insights about the current episodes and what people feel, their dreams, their despair. It's really it's really a passion to understand all this stuff. So finally, when it says tal vez mañana en Buenos Aires yo cierro la valija, me subo a un barco y nunca más, the author points out the uncertainty of the future, and the protagonist of this tango is considering emigrating due to the difficult economic situation. Okay, there on this picture, by the end of 2001, when the crisis was ongoing, many people were unemployed, being unable to get their savings out of the banks due to the corralito. Many families didn't have anything to eat. Therefore, those who were poor became even poorer, and this is something basic, like having the food. Therefore, there were many plunders all throughout the country, especially in Buenos Aires city. This tango is called Carritos Cartoneros. It's a tango from Carlos Herreti from the year 2003. It says, ¿quién te mintió, primer mundo, Buenos Aires? Que te atraviesan los carritos como antes, el caballo al trotecito livianito y dos pibitos morochitos al pescante. El de los shopping, el bacán Puerto Madero, que al esconderse el sol tras Catalinas, salen a luz viejos carritos cartoneros. Tracción a sangre que prohíbe una ordenanza, pero permite ese dolor con vista gorda, pues todos saben la justicia está chicata, y ahora también se ha vuelto sorda. Nowadays, in Buenos Aires city, poverty and misery can be seen throughout all the city. Contemporary tangos represent the homeless children on the streets, poverty, and the cartoneros as the consequence of the economic situation. Also, drug consumption is shown as a consequence of poverty, and this is a difference regarding traditional tango lyrics, where drugs was taken on a context of parties and milongas and all the cabarets. So when we say in Spanish cartón, it means cardboard, and cartonero would be like cardboarder, that is a person that picks up waste from the streets. They collect mainly cardboard left by offices and shopping centers around the cities. As a result of the 2001 economic crisis, many people that were poor became even more poor, and without a job, collecting waste from the streets and selling them to recycle companies was the only way to get some money to buy food and survive. There on the picture, we see the title, the Carritos Cartonero, is that. It's a carriage of cardboarders, that would be. And also, this is another example of a word that it's in contemporary tango lyrics that immediately take us to a period and a situation, like in I don't know, when we listen, for example, when we listen to Malevo, Compadrito, Milonguita, it immediately takes us to a specific period of Buenos Aires and specific period of history. So the same happens when we hear this tango and it speaks about carritos cartoneros. On this lyric, the author shows that the ideas of Buenos Aires being a European-style city is a lie. There are a lot of rich areas, but as it says, as it mentions Puerto Madero and Catalinas, which is a very a rich neighborhood and a big skyscraper that when the sunlight disappears at dawn, all the cartoneros appear to collect all the waste in order to survive. So it's describing the situation. That then it continues with the critic saying, well, everybody knows that justice is blind. Chicata is the word for blind in slang. And now she has also become deaf because justice doesn't want to hear. This is criticizing the government. There was a local law that prohibited the carriages pulled by horses or by humans, driven by humans, and in specific areas. So all this was they were informal workers for many periods, for many years. Now, luckily, they have been incorporated into the work labor force. Here we see the video of this song. Some videos there of the waste pickers, the cartoneros.
Y al esconderse el sol de las Catalinas, sale la luz de los carritos cartoneros. Una gran bolsa de arpillera en retaguardia.
Okay, now we'll continue and we'll go to the last section, that it's about la tragedia de Cro-Magnon. This fire was the worst tragedy in the world of rock worldwide and one of the biggest non-natural disasters in Argentina, with 194 deaths and at least 1,400 wounded people. One of the most traumatic experiences for our generation. After the tragedy, many cultural centers and nightclubs throughout the country closed, especially those in Buenos Aires, including some tango venues. This was one of the most traumatic events that was experienced by our generation and by tango lyricists, and it's represented and portrayed within tango lyrics. Now here is the trigger warning. Like for 30 seconds, we'll see a video of the tragedy in order to see and feel what the tango composers experienced. It's only 30 seconds. I think that this video will show more than all the explanation. So that's the day of the tragedy. Many of the lyricists and composers experienced all these, were witnesses of all these. It's really something traumatic that we all lived and experienced. And it had many consequences. It had many consequences for tango, because there was a before and after Cro-Magnon in Argentina and all the places. And this is represented in a tango that is Hacia las cenizas. And here we see Porque esa noche te llevó. Okay, this tango the narrator starts this tango speaking directly to that victim of the tragedy. Porque esa noche te llevó, because that night took you away. He continues describing the horror lived that he was witness of that. Tu cuerpo entre otros cuerpos desmayados, tu cielo de cenizas y sin fuerza ya, pisoteado estás. There was much more people than what the venue could legally have. Therefore, when the fire started, everybody wanted to escape. Some fell and were stamped by the others that were running away. So that's what it's describing. That beloved one dies. The narrator misses him a lot. He can only keep the memory alive. He wants to be close to what's left of that person. Tu foto, entre otras fotos que no volverán. This is this picture. Part of Mitre Street became a memorial for the victims, and there's a picture and the name of each dead person. This is something that we can see in Buenos Aires, and it's portrayed in this tango. So now we'll see part of the video of this tango. This is one of the main orchestras, one of the most famous orchestras on contemporary tango, that is Ciudad Baigón. And we see the influence of rock music. Okay, and finally, there's something that I want to show you, that it's the image of the past that is always better and idealized on traditional tango lyrics, is no longer valid nowadays in tango. As we have seen with all these examples, the past years are not always a better place than today. As we have seen, there has been a lot of injustice, killing, crisis, despairs, and problems. Here, there's one of the reasons of why tango has become an instrument for social and political activism. Here lies the possibility of making a society a better place, the possibility of changing things that are not just. This is one of the things that is a characteristic of contemporary tango lyrics. So this is the end of this section, and I will give now to Mary Lourdes. Will continue to explain about Ni Una Menos and how the feminism movement is represented on contemporary tango lyrics. So thank you, and we'll talk in a few minutes.
Gracias. Voy a compartir mi pantalla. Oh, there you guys are. Okay. And you guys can see that screen, all right? Pull up this screen. Where am I? Okay. And alrighty. Okay. Alrighty. So for years, women's groups and academics have been raising public awareness about machismo culture, violence against women, and women's rights. However, social media and a new generation of daughters brought these conversations to the public arena, inviting mothers and grandmothers to join them in the fight for women's rights. The hashtag Ni Una Menos went viral, and what followed were waves of green, La Marea Verde, women wearing green handkerchiefs, the symbol of women's rights, resistance, and equality, marching in the streets of Buenos Aires. The movement soon gained momentum throughout Latin America, where 1 in 3 women have been subject to violence, and between 17% to 53% have experienced domestic violence. Of the top 25 countries in the world with the highest femicide rate, 14 of the countries are in Latin America. In 2016, Argentina had its first national women's strike when 3 men drugged, gang raped, and murdered 16-year-old Luisa Perez. Today, every 30 hours, a woman is killed in Argentina. Some positive changes that have resulted from the strikes and protests include the addition of a new Ministry of Women, Gender and Diversity, which operates a hotline for victims of violence and abuse. Moreover, government workers are required to attend gender sensitivities training, and universities are taking measures to address gender violence on campus. The momentum of the movement La Marea Verde also played a significant role in a landmark vote on December 30th, 2020, when Argentina legalized abortion during the first trimester. In hospitals, the procedures would be free of charge for women. More work is needed as women fight for equal pay, gender equality, and gay transgender rights. And so in this quote here, el feminicidio es el último eslabón de una cadena de desigualdades de la mujer in Argentina, Latinoamérica. So it's femicide is the last link of the chain that basically is Juanjo, remind me, what is desigualdades?
Yeah, desigualdades is inequalities.
Inequalities. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sigo. Okay. For centuries, women have been socialized to the follower role, following one clear lead. You were born in a pink basket, following societal norms of femininity, maintaining your purity until marriage, raising children without complaint, and supporting your husband regardless of his transgressions, limitations, or any propensity for aggression or violence. Feminist scholar Judith Butler explains how gender is a social construct, a public performance where girls and women are pressured to wear makeup, pink versus blue, dresses, high heels, etc. Failure to perform our gender correctly often leads to public disapproval, shame, and rejection. Female dancers experience public criticism all the time at milongas, where our shoes are judged by both sexes. I once had an experienced leader, popular amongst the best followers, tell me that he would never invite a dancer without the proper heels because it signified her commitment to tango and her dance level. Commentary about makeup, clothing, and shoes have been used to evaluate women's commitment to motherhood, the workplace, religion, and country. We also perform our gender privately based on the stories we tell ourselves about the role and potential of women. In Tango, we have seen these societal gendered expectations manifest themselves in our classes, where women default to the follower role and men are not asked which role they wish to play. In my college classes, for example, I always ask the men and women to pick the role they would like to start learning tango. And so they don't have to default to the traditional follow male role. We also find gender bias in tango workshops where female professionals are pressured to tour with a male dancer, whereas a male professional can choose to tour solo. During tango workshops, it's not uncommon for male teachers to do most of the talking, or for students to primarily ask questions of the male teacher. Last, we find this gender bias amongst tango organizers, in which male organizers have been less likely to speak out against sexual harassment and sexual misconduct at milongas. However, there have been female organizers who have dismissed dancer complaints as well, attributing it to boys will be boys, the chamuchero attitude. In festivals and workshops, I often choose classes as either a leader or a follower, both in the United States and in Buenos Aires. And I'm rarely taken seriously as a leader, which many women have also shared similar complaints. At marathons, whenever there's a cap for followers, I often will contact the organizer saying I can just lead, given there's a shortage of leaders. And every single time I've been rejected, I've yet to be accepted into a marathon as a leader. And so what matters is not my dance abilities, but whether or not I'm a male. So we see this gender bias even today in the United States as well as in Argentina. Tango analysts have been studying the inequitable gender bias that both men and women have normalized and internalized. In traditional tango, author Villarino, cited by scholar Sofia Sacconi, identified 3 common feminine tropes in tango lyrics. There's the la madre, so the self-sacrificing, pure, sincere woman without flaws. There is la mujer que triunfa in la male vida, so the perseverant woman who can overcome great triumphs. And there's la linda que se pierde, the beautiful woman who lost her way. When sons leave their mothers into adulthood, if they return home, it's because a woman is to blame for having seduced him or deceived him. The woman who has triumphed, was deceived, seduced, and abandoned by an unscrupulous man, will regret leaving their parents' home and neighborhood for the cabaret in the city, for modernity and materialism. So we see these themes throughout traditional tango. The woman in traditional tango must suffer in solitude. Archetti, cited in Sacconi, states that the milonguita cannot choose motherhood, a pure life, if she chooses to embrace the sacrilegious nightlife of the milongas. So the mother-whore binary exists throughout classic tango. Traditional tango speaks nostalgically about a time that has passed. It speaks about existential topics like time and death, and more generally topics about poverty and human suffering, inspired by the wave of immigration, the Great Depression, and political corruption. So this is what we often see in traditional tango. Where tangos of yesteryear held up a mirror to society, tangos of today hold up a megaphone to alert audiences about the silence narratives of the modern woman. Movements like queer tango and tango hembra, founded by Marisa Vasquez, who hosted the very first female-only international tango event in March of 2019, represent women in a new light. Tango verde, or green tango, based on the La Marea Verde movement. So La Marea means wave, so the green wave is one of the many instruments activists and writers have used to represent feminist values and introduce new voices and perspectives about violence, domestic abuse, motherhood, sexuality, and femininity. Where women were once written about in traditional tango and what I call green tango, women are doing the speaking. La Marea Verde, the green wave, is a dialogue between daughters, mothers, aunts, and abuelas ensued, in which women reevaluated their prior personal experiences within patriarchal institutions. Women have been viewed as inherently the weaker sex, committed to a subordinate place in society, raising children and supporting their husbands. The real labor, both physical and intellectual and political, was left to the men. So although there have been tension between women regarding definitions of feminism, what has brought women together in recent years has been this unified fight against femicide, against the murder of women. Many tango dancers do not realize that there were actual female composers at the dawn of tango in the early 20th century. Azucena Maizani was both a singer and composer, discovered by Francisco Canaro in 1920. Her most famous composition was Pero José in 1928. Female lyricists were seldom, when female lyricists wanted to publish their works, they often had to use a male pseudonym. When they did use their name, they were less likely to have their work produced. So let's just play a quick sample of this traditional tango.
Llegando la noche, recién te levantas y sales ufano a buscar un vegué. Lucís con orgullo tu estampa elegante, sentado muy muelle en tu regia baqué. Paseás por corriente.
I will now talk about a few examples of contemporary tangos written by women who use tango as a platform to express their struggles, their fears, and desires. Mujer Nueva, the title of this particular tango, is one of many tangos written in the late 21st century. In the last 10 to 15 years, we see these tangos being produced. And this particular tango, the female narrator laments that tangos have not represented her pain. in this line, al verso de un dolor callado, and have not, yes, excuse me, this particular line, al verso de un dolor callado, she's commenting that traditional tangos haven't represent the realities of lived women. They haven't expressed what the perspective of the women. A mí no me han escrito un tango. So tangos of the past were not written from the perspective of women, were not written by women for the most part. Without any tangos or musical sheets, so in this line, sin letra ni partitura, she is empowering herself with the tools of starting a new revolution, citing Che Guevara, descruciéndolo al Che. By reading Che and educating herself, a new woman is born. Voy naciendo mujer nueva. So let's take a listen to a short clip of this song. Opa, perdón. Oh, okay, that was, yeah. Okay, why did that happen? Un segundo, sorry about that. The heck? How did that happen? All right, let me just pull it up again. That was random and strange. Let me just pull it up. Discúlpame.
Mary,
¿Sí?
estamos viendo toda la ventana, así que si tocas arriba la ventana que dice Mujer Nueva, la cuarta, vamos a ver el video.
1 second. I just, why is it? I'm out of this modality. Oh, I don't know. So 1 second. Let me just pull up my, I lost my menu bar. My menu bar went away. So instead of trying to look for that, I'm looking for my Spanish folder. Ah, there it is. 1 second. So, sorry about that, everybody. Okay. Sorry about that. That was very strange. All right, so let me play a short clip here of the song Mujer Nueva.
¿A quién se lo decís? Gritando voy.
Ese amor que yo no busco vende tristeza en los trenes, con todo por perder. No quiero conservar, no más de junto al porvenir. A mí no me han.
So weird. Like all of a sudden that jazz festival, I don't even know what that is. It's so strange why that all of a sudden appeared. Okay, yeah, this is where I left off. Okay. In Green Tango, when women choose motherhood, she isn't an idealized mother. Rather, she's a real mother, and all that comes with it, its doubts, its fears and questions. And it isn't the son who tells her story, she tells her story. In this particular tango, O quéreme así o nunca me quieras, the female narrator lists all the obligations of the perfect wife in this particular tango, about being faithful to routines, mi fiel a rutinas, about having a positive presence, being obedient, and so on. She isn't some bird in the nest, de ave en tu nido, committed to the home to raise children without flight. She isn't just another image for you to catalog. No voy a hacer foto en tu archivo de muestras. She isn't an object, a naive doll for others to shelf and admire. Ni tu pertenencia. She concludes with a bold statement. You either love me like this or you don't love me at all. O quéreme así o nunca me quieras. So let's listen to a clip of this song.
Que sea un alivio continuo y fiel a rutinas, buena presencia, ni nena obediente, ni tonta muñeca, ni campo de hierbas. No sueñes ni pienses o te hagas ideas de eterna caricia o de aventurido. No voy a hacer foto en tu archivo de muestras tu pertenencia. Créeme así o nunca me quieras.
In Green Tango, we also have female lyricists make public domestic violence, sexual abuse, and oppression. At the same time, women are portrayed as independent and empowered when telling their stories. So with these next two tangos, you'll see examples of women writing publicly about their experiences with physical abuse and violence. In Tristes Manos de Poeta by Eva Fiori, she writes, puños fuertes como el hierro, que acarician suavemente. Fists of iron caress her tenderly and lead to a night of horror. El horror de nuestras noches. So in this abusive relationship or encounter, she acknowledges that love cannot blossom from violence, that this isn't love, de un amor que no florece. We have seen posters and paintings of the painted hand over the woman's mouth. These are the sad hands of the female poet, Tristes Manos de Poeta, that take up the pen to tell her story. It is in the writing of this tango and sharing it with the world where she becomes liberated from the chain of violence and oppression. Esa fuga fue perfecta y ese adiós mi libertad. In traditional tangos, the confident compadrito down in his luck arouses our sympathies. In Green Tango, the impoverished bravado male who resorts to violence is rebuked by the modern milonguita. La cara golpeada de mi pasado, the battered face of her past, is crying and bloodied. She bites into the towels and pillows, wanting to scream. She then looks into the mirror, esa cara en el espejo, and doesn't look back. Ya no mira para atrás. In that moment, she is looking forward to a future, and in the past is more violence waiting for her if she turns back. However, she must live with this shame, el secreto oculto beneath the pillows, bajo la almohada. So let's listen to a clip of this song, La Mujer Golpeada.
La cara golpeada de mi pasado, llanto con sangre, barro de sal, morder las toallas y las almohadas, esa cara en el espejo ya no mira para atrás.
In this last example about gender violence, the title of this tango, named after the women's movement, Ni Una Menos, describes a moment of reckoning, a moment for justice for the thousands of women who have died by the hands of men. In this tango, we see the nosotros form, the collective identity of the we, or somos. Ahora estamos juntas, ninguna está sola. The female narrator is saying that we are in this together and that the battered woman isn't alone. If you hurt one more woman, you are harming us all. Lastimando a una, nos herís a todos, todas. Women in this movement scream together for those who have been silenced. Gritaremos fuerte por las murieron, por las callaron. They will scream for those who could not escape in time, las que no pudieron escapar a tiempo. They will scream and protest for the women who couldn't see that a better life was possible. Juntar el valor, ver que era posible una vida mejor. Let's listen to a clip of this song by the all-women's Argentine Orquesta China Cruel. The name of this orquesta signifies the rebuke of the common stereotype of the passive, submissive Asian female. It is the cruel China girl, the woman who rejects the objectification and subordinate positioning of women.
¿Qué pasa con vos? Te veo perdido y quién lo diría, casi arrepentido. Te quedaste solo, ¿quién lo iba a pensar? Por fin te ganaron el último round. Nada es para siempre, te doy la noticia. En algún momento llega la justicia, la que vos creías de tu propiedad, la que maltrataste sin sentir piedad.
In traditional tango, female sexuality is objectified, told from the male perspective. Female desire and pleasure from the female perspective is absent in traditional tango. If a woman does express desire, she is viewed as unsuitable for marriage. In contemporary tango, women make public their desires and pleasure without shame or apology. So in the first example, Palomas, the woman is like a dove who flies everywhere to express her passion. Yo tuve las pasiones florecidas en todos los países del planeta. And so she's basically confessing to having sex everywhere. And so she is, in other words, isn't confined to a single nest laying her eggs. She is free like a dove and free to have sex with whomever she likes. And the next example, Yo Soy, the woman describes a bad night of sex where her desires weren't fulfilled, but she will return in the morning with the hopes for a better night of sex. Cuando llega la mañana y vuelve con su afán para emprenderla. And so dissatisfied with the night before, she's sort of taking charge of her sexuality, having agency to return again to have a better morning. And in the final example, we have a poetic description of an orgy that involved drugs and alcohol. Embriagados is the drunk ones. They blow themselves up with sex and desire. Cuerpos que se enredan y se inmolan en un cáliz de deseo. And so definitely we do not find descriptions or images of drugs and alcohol and orgies in traditional tango. So this is something, and especially not written from the perspective of a female. So I want to conclude by saying that tango needs to be a space where women and men can write about gender inequities and violence. Tango needs to be a space where women and men can choose their dance roles rather than defaulting to the traditional follower leader role. Tango needs to be a space where women can choose to dress as they wish, whether that be a t-shirt and jeans or sexy red dresses and 9-centimeter heels without public shame, judgment, or assumptions. Tango needs to be a safe space where women and men come together in communion to embrace, dance, and take pause to listen to and understand the layered voices and stories of tango's past and present. It is, in the words of Tango, where buried secrets are waiting to be resurrected. On that note, I encourage everyone to study the lyrics in their native format, studying the culture and history, and plug yourself into what is happening today in tango to support writers, musicians, dancers, and tango organizers like Meredith here. And this moment, we can take your questions, and afterwards, Juanjo will share some recommendations for those of you that would like to have access to some contemporary music, so some online radio stations. And then after class, Meredith will distribute to all of you the actual link to the presentation, which has all of the links to all of the songs and resources that we have. And so at this point, we'll be happy to take your questions.
Yes, in the meantime, I would like to add some final comments about the importance of understanding the lyrics, because we all know that tango is a cultural expression, and in order to really get inside, there are at least 3 items that should be addressed, and this is like the music, the dance, and also the lyrics. Like, if we don't understand the lyrics, we are missing one part, an important part of tango that we can see, because there's a lot of content, a lot of information. And if we just dance, but we don't understand the music, we don't get the full image of tango. And if we dance, but we don't understand the lyrics, we're also missing an important part. And that's why understanding the lyrics, it gives us a more mindful dance. And this is because we don't like the same way a tango that is speaking about like the final examples about sex experiences, about pleasure, or a tango about a tragedy. It's something that when we are conscious about the story that is being told, what we do is like our body behaves in a different way. That's why it gives a very important and interesting insight to understand and know the lyrics. And of course, this is something that it gets us closer to the culture and the events, and it's something very important. So I encourage all of you to start paying attention to tango lyrics and the words and these characteristics that are present on all this series. And there are many, many more examples that we didn't include, because tango it's full of lyrics, and we would need not 2 hours but 3 hours to continue analyzing and explaining everything. So
well, that lecture was so awesome that we might have to bring you back. So maybe we'll get another hour and a half. Amazing, really, really a phenomenal lecture. Just so grateful, and I learned so much. And if anyone has a question, you can open your mic and I'll call on you, or you can also write in the chat.
I also wanted to add that I chose not to do tango translations in English because I got my MFA in poetry and creative nonfiction, and also studied poetry in translation. And it requires a poet who is intimately connected to the language and history of tango of Buenos Aires, excuse me, to really effectively translate the music. And so I wanted to take it from the perspective of an academic, analyzing its significance. But I definitely invite people to learn Spanish. I've been learning Spanish through learning tango poetry, and you are invited to a whole new way of thinking that you don't have access to if you just only read the translations. And it's wonderful work that translators do, and I admire their work. But I just wanted to kind of make that distinction, for this particular class. So for any of you who are probably wondering why we didn't just automatically translate everything, it's for that reason.
Yeah, that's true. And with Mary, like for over a year, we've been analyzing and reading every week at least one lyric of tango. And sometimes it's very important, this of the language, because there are nuances that are very difficult to grasp. when you translate. So it's something that there's a saying that we say that translators in Italian we say traduttore, tradittore, che vuol dire translators are traitors, because we are making a treason translating. There are things that cannot be translated. And yes.
I really liked how you alternated phrases, speaking the lyric and translating it. I thought it was nice to be connected to the sound of the actual lyric while also hearing the translation. So I thought that was great, as opposed to just reading an English translation, for example. Questions? I'll say something to get us started. All of us who love dancing tango, we know that when we go to most milongas anywhere in the world, most places, we're still exclusively hearing music from the 1920s to 1950s, compositions and recordings from a really long time ago. And I often think about it and talk about it as our responsibility to learn new sounds, learn new lyrics, learn new music in order to keep the art form growing. And to support all the people who are creating new music, new compositions, new lyrics, so that we have tango for the future. But what this lecture really showed me is that it's more than that. It's more than the artists. It's like if we're not learning about these new lyrics and tangos, then we're denying all of these major events in the past 20 to 50 years of Argentine history. And Argentine history and culture are important to us as tango dancers. It's in order to acknowledge, to, in a certain way, live all of these events that you've brought to our attention, from the military dictatorship all the way to Cro-Magnon, to Ni Una Menos. We need to dance and listen to this music. So it's kind of even a wider imperative than how I'm used to thinking about it. And I really like this new idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because if you probably go out into any street in the United States and ask any person, people have, and especially women, even academics, they've never heard of Ni Una Menos and are not aware of the women's movement. And maybe they got a quick 5-second blip on CNN about abortion being legalized, but that's kind of the extent of it. And so, so they don't know about something that's contemporary, let alone something like the dictatorship, for instance, and the collapse of the economy that still affects Argentina and South America. And so working with Juanjo made me realize how tango, contemporary tango, and the lyrics, serves as like a megaphone for like what's happening south of the United States border. Like we become so like insular, and we live in this like heavenly bubble of capitalism and privilege and great fortune, and we kind of forget like what's happening around us with our amongst our neighbors. So
and it's even, that you say that, it's even more important now to try to understand the perspective outside our bubble, because our bubble is about to get really fortunate. And we're, the CDC said if we're vaccinated, we can go all these places without masks, which I think is crazy, but whatever. Our lives are truly opening up now after 15 months of a lot of hardship, while in Argentina right now, they're living the worst moment of the pandemic to this point. People we know are very sick right now with COVID, and then in the rest of the world as well. So it's really important, even as we embrace some of the freedoms that are coming to us, that we realize that because of our much greater access to the vaccine in the US, we're living yet again a privileged existence that's not, the reality actually anywhere else on Earth right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And and hoping with like translations of this work, can help raise awareness, like in the Tango community, which is often a privileged community in the United States, and just kind of educating more women and men as well about what's happening. And so I'm hoping to continue with this work and probably publish academic articles out of it, but maybe later. Juanjo and I talked about working on a book in looking at the role of the milonguera during the golden age of tango. There are few women alive during that period, and they're in their 80s. And again, about capturing their perspective and their story. And you do see lots of interviews with these milongueras, but if you notice online, anytime you like listen to their stories, their husband is always sitting right next to them on the couch, and it's usually the questions are directed toward him, and he does most of the talking. So I'm excited to also collaborate with Paula Pechetti, and she's like connected with the older Milonga Tango community there. So that's also like a future project that we have planned in the coming years.
It's an urgent project.
Very
like
much.
you said, that these women are in their 80s, and we've all seen what a huge risk the pandemic has been to elders, and it's imperative to capture their stories and their perspective. So
Definitely.
that's beautiful. And also, I think that, you know, actually the whole purpose of the lecture series for these 15 months has been to go beyond the tango trance, right? This experience we have when dancing tango that's captured all of us and makes us so delighted in the action of dancing tango that we often, you know, don't make time to study the lyrics or learn about the culture or everything else, learn about everything else that tango is. And I think that this was the perfect lecture to complete the series, because you so clearly pointed to us the new roles that tango is taking in Argentine and world culture, and how tango is changing, how it's changed and it's changing, and how it's really time for our tango to change. For example, you know, not assuming that women want to follow in classes, or not only playing music from the 20s through 50s, or not normalizing only dancing in stilettos, and many other things, right? So I think you just...
Yeah, of course. What we see there is their society is changing, and within society we have tango as an expression of the culture. Therefore, tango is changing. So if we are aware of these contemporary lyrics, we are getting the content of what's going on in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, and Latin America, and also worldwide. Like right now I'm here in Italy, and this movement, Ni Una Menos, they also do it here. And it's something that it has gone beyond borders, overseas. And also this is something interesting, because when we go to Buenos Aires, to Montevideo, especially foreigners that don't understand the language and the lyrics, sometimes they wonder why there's a couple that is dancing a specific tango in a way, like with very slow and dense movements, and why is in other tango they are having another type of energy. And sometimes this energy is related to listening both the music and the story. So listening to, knowing the stories being told, it gives you an important input for improving the dancing. So we see how all these three items, the lyrics, the music, and the dance, are interconnected. So analyzing and studying each of them, it gives us more tools and more inputs to be better dancers. That's why it's important for us to share all this with you, and encourage you to listen to more contemporary tango.
Absolutely. All right, this is a last chance for questions. If anyone has a comment or a question, and I feel like you do, April. I feel like I see your wheels turning.
I have a comment, I guess. I'm a teacher in an elementary school, and I've used tango lyrics sometimes with my students. And the very first time I did it, I think I played a traditional tango, and my 8th graders who are usually very honest, said, oh, you know, this is music of my grandparents, but they didn't mean it negatively necessarily. They were just making that observation. But now I think I'm going to include more contemporary music, just so they can see that things evolve. It's just an example of how music evolves.
Yeah, I would start with the Fernández Fierro, because it's like rock and roll, and they're wearing street clothes. They look like teenagers, and I think young kids would find it appealing. And it sounds really cool, like you like bang your head to it. I think they would like that.
Yeah, speak about headbanging tango. If you go to the big tango festival in La Plata, where I was with Julie Rogan and Laszlo also 2 years ago, two years and a month ago, people get so excited that they stop dancing tango and they actually start moshing. There is a mosh pit. So yeah, so the embrace doesn't contain all possible expressions of tango anymore. Sometimes it has to burst beyond.
I love that. I gotta see that one day.
It's hard in the time of the pandemic to imagine a mosh pit, but there we were 2 years ago with Kristen in the middle moshing more than anyone.
Wow.
Yeah, and we'll be there again soon.
We will be there again. I hope we will. We just don't know exactly when. Yeah, Laszlo will be there. Laszlo, who would go to 2-3 milongas and then say, let's go to a fourth. All right. Any last questions, comments? Mary Lourdes. We have guests coming for the toast. Mary Lourdes, Juan Jose. I loved this lecture so much. Thank you. Thank you for giving us just a perfect exit from the series. So much to think about, so much to contemplate in terms of the role that tango is can play in the world today. And how we might live tango in a slightly new way going forward. So I know we're going to get the PowerPoint. I'll send it out to everybody so we can do more listening and reading. Any last comments, Mary Lourdes, Juan Jose?
Thank you again for this opportunity, and thank you everybody for attending this class. And so it's been a gift. So appreciate everybody being here today.
Yeah, I want to also thank you all for being here and for finishing this presentation. I will show you some recommendations that we wanted to share with you. Okay, are all the resources and scholarly articles that we've used to prepare this, but the important thing is that there are online resources about contemporary tango if you want to go deeper in this issue. One is Fractura Expuesta, that it's a website, it's an online magazine with news. It also has an online radio, videos, the agenda. It's all about contemporary tango. And here, while we were preparing this presentation, we've seen two examples of how contemporary tango reflects and portrays what's going on in the world. Like, for example, there was one tango, we all remember that recently Diego Maradona died, and there was a tango from January that it was a way of remembering him, and it's something that it was created just 5 months ago. And also there was a tango like in Argentina that when everybody were isolated at their homes, there was a tango that it was composed by many contemporary lyricists online through Zoom. It was a collective work, and it's something that, of course, I'm sure that there will be tango speaking about the coronavirus. So it's something that this is like a good source. And also the second one, Radio CAF, is the Orquesta Típica Fernández Fierro, this orchestra. It's like one of the most representative of all this new era of tango. And they created a club in the neighborhood of Almagro where we can go and we see all contemporary orchestras. Like this is very interesting to see the composers that are alive singing the musicians. It's, of course, we all love tango from the Época Dorada, but we will never attend a show of Troilo or Goyeneche, unfortunately. But with contemporary tango, we can do and see the artists alive. And the last one, it's a book. This is Mari Lourdes can tell us about Mirada de Mujer and las letristas del siglo XXI.
Yeah, it's a collection of contemporary tangos written just by women. And again, I'll share this presentation so you can click on the link. And I bought the book as a PDF, and it costs €6. And the Tango organizer in France just emailed me a PDF of it. So otherwise, if you get it on Amazon, it's like $37. So yeah, so that's available to you as well. And Juan, I forgot to tell you is that that Meredith is going to do a toast. So she's ending with a toast. So I think we're supposed to grab a drink. I have hot water. Maybe you have coffee.
Yeah. So first of all, so make sure you have your toasting beverage, but then please unmute and join me in giving Mari Lourdes and Juan Jose a huge round of applause.
Thank you, everybody.
And then pause and give
Muchas
yourselves
gracias.
a round of applause for spending so much time with us in the lecture series. Thank you all. Thank you. It means everything. It has meant everything to get together like this and learn about different parts of tango and be inspired by different artists and presenters for the past 15 months. And I mean, I know everybody got sick of being on Zoom a long time ago, and the fact that you're willing to keep getting together like this all this time has meant the world to me. And I hope that a lot of connections have been made, a lot has been learned, and a lot of, I hope that you've been buoyed along a bit in this difficult time by the ability to get together like this. Thank you, Mitra, who gave beautiful lectures in this series. Thank you for coming online, Mitra. And thank you, everybody. So, to better days, folks, to better days. They're coming, yes? Cheers.
Better days.
Cheers.
Cheers,
To
salud.
hugging again. Cheers, cheers. Hey, Sweets, did you get a good photo of that? Oh, maybe he's not there. Okay, one more toast. Okay, 1, 2, 3, here. Beautiful. Okay, everybody, keep staying safe, keep taking care of yourselves. I can't wait to hug each and every one of you in person, which is going to be awesome because there's going to need to be a lot of traveling involved to get to each and every one of you. So thank you. Thank you
so much, Meredith, for all you, for putting this together. So many inspirations. I know it's just a lot of work on the back end to pull it off, but I really have appreciated the breadth and diversity of themes and amazing people. And it was beautiful to have a chance to share a little bit. But just thank you so much. I wish I could have come to more of these, but you really kept the fire burning.
I'm going to send you the recording of this one. This is one not to miss. And yeah, thank you. I've gotten so much inspiration from you, Mitra, and honestly from so many of you in this room. So really the thanks go flying all around from one box to the next. All right, everybody, have a wonderful night. See you soon. Thank you. Thank you, Mari Lourdes. Thank you, Juanjo.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.